And of course, in the midst of connecting, let's connect it. It is United States money that is driving what's happening over there. It is United States policies that's driving the oppression that continues to happen to the Palestinian people.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to The Struggle. The Struggle is shown on over 30 cable stations from Maine to New York City, on the internet at thestruggle.org. On March 30th, the Israeli government committed a frightful massacre in the Gaza Strip. Over 900 people were shot, over 700 of them with live ammunition. 18 died that day. One died from his injuries yesterday.
We begin today's show in Gaza, where 18 Palestinians have died after Israeli forces opened fire Friday on a protest near the Gaza Strip's eastern border with Israel. As many as 1,700 Palestinians were wounded. The deaths and injuries came as 30,000 Gaza residents gathered near the wall as part of a planned 6-week-long nonviolent protest against the blockade of Gaza and to demand the right of return for Palestinian refugees. The protest began on Friday, March 30th, which is known as Land Day. The annual event marks the anniversary of the March 30th, 1976 killing of 6 Palestinians protesting the Israeli confiscation of Arab land. Video posted online shows unarmed Palestinians being shot in the back while taking part in Friday's protest. Another 49 Palestinians were injured by Israeli forces on Saturday.
Israel's actions have been condemned around the world, but Israel is rejecting calls to investigate the killings. Meanwhile, at the United Nations, the U.S. blocked a move by the UN Security Council to open an investigation. Riyad Mansoor, the Palestinian ambassador to the United Nations, condemned Israel's actions.
Gaza is already surrounded by electrified fences and walls. Preparing for the Gaza March, the Israeli authorities had their bulldozers, which are made in the USA, push up giant mounds of earth for soldiers and snipers to use as firing positions. Human Rights Watch issued a statement which said Israeli soldiers were not merely using excessive force, but were apparently acting on orders that all but ensured a bloody military response to the Palestinian demonstrations. Bernie Sanders criticized the killing of the demonstrators and said it was the right of all peoples to protest. In Ireland, Gerry Adams, the former leader of Sinn Féin, called for the government to expel the Israeli ambassador. The Israeli group B'Tselem has issued its first ever call to Israeli soldiers telling them to refuse orders to fire on unarmed Palestinians. Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia said nothing at all about the massacre. The Trump administration blocked the UN Security Council from even issuing a press release about the matter. Here's a picture of 10 Democratic congressmen and congresswomen in Israel smiling with the war criminal Netanyahu just a few days before the massacre. None have said a word of criticism of the killings since. One member of Congress in the photo was Connecticut's Reza DeLauro. In New Haven, we braved the rain and cold to deliver a message to Reza DeLauro on April 3rd.
Oh no,
In another protest of the massacre in Gaza, this one in Boston, 8 young Jews organized by the group If Not Now blocked the Israeli consulate until they were arrested. Last week we had some still photos of a protest of Prince Salman's visit to the MIT Media Lab.
The man MIT is hosting has dropped illegal cluster bombs made next door in Rhode Island on civilians in Yemen. The man MIT is hosting is starving millions of people to death by blockading access to food and medicines into Yemen.
The protest was well reported in the Tech, the MIT student newspaper, and there was a stinging editorial in the paper as well. Then on April 2nd, the Cambridge, Massachusetts City Council adopted a resolution on the oppressive policies of the Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The resolution criticized the violence and the warmongering policies that Saudi Arabia has used during its war in Yemen. By the way, while Salman had no word of sympathy for the Palestinians, he did meet with AIPAC and other far-right organizations who fanatically support Zionism and oppose BDS. Now to a forum in early March made up of people who went on the Tree of Life educational funds trip to Palestine some months earlier.
Hello everyone, peace be upon you all. So when I have been asked to talk about something, to cover one part of my trip to Palestine, I thought what I'm gonna cover. And then I thought about one incident. It's a big and small incident happened with us, and it's the detention. So this is my first time go to Palestine, and we always were lucky to go with Jewish friends and Christian friends, and we always go as one group. We support each other, we protect each other also. And every year, every time we go, we get held and we get honored by, by the Israelis at the airport, or some other places, checkpoints, that we, as a Muslim, we get held on a side for 2, 3, sometimes 5 hours. This particular year, it was a little bit more higher. The honoring was a little higher and different. So, and I want to cover this point because this incident made a lot of people feel so worried about us, about our safety, and I thought if I put some light on this incident, that will make that fear goes away. So we were at a mosque. We were 9 Muslims, a group of 9 out of 29 travelers, and we were at the mosque for the last day in Jerusalem. And after that, we're supposed to leave to Bethlehem. We finished the prayer. It's a Friday prayer, which is congregational prayer, which is big amount of people. They come and pray in the same time. So we get divided. The men pray in the mosque, and we pray in Dome of the Rock. It's the same place, but a little bit different. So we decided to meet in the middle of the, big open area. After we met, we decided to leave, and we thought, okay, how about if we take a group picture? We gathered each other in the front of the Dome of the Rock, and we start taking pictures from each other, with all kind of phones, cameras. And then we saw a group on the right side, and everybody taking pictures with a small Palestinian flag, and we said, oh, we waited for our turn because everybody were taking pictures. And we took the small flag, we took a picture, and we gave it back. And then we start, moving back. And on the gate of the mosque, we realized that, oops, the Israelis authorities, they asked us to be on the side. They confiscated our passports. They start searching our backpacks. We were surprised. We were not understanding what happened. We didn't take it serious, that taking a picture with a flag that gonna be making a big deal for them. So they took out of 9, which does not make sense. They took out of 9. They took 5 of us, and they paraded us in the old, shopping places, into the Wheeling Wall area, where I was walking over there and I realized Israeli flag there, and I felt so sad. I felt the injustice at that moment, that how come we have been detained because of the Palestinian flag while the Israelis are, enjoying taking pictures with their Israeli flag. We had to continue to go to the police station while our phone was confiscated. We were not allowed to call anybody from our group or even calling the American embassy as an American citizens. After that, we have been held for 7 hours in the cold. They did it, I think, on purpose. They put 2 of the women, me and my friend, outside in the cold, and they put 3 brothers inside the room. They tried their best to stop us from any right to pray, to go to the washroom. After that, Tree of Life did a great job. We got a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, and she told us that it wasn't any crime, it wasn't any felony, taking a picture with the flag, just enjoy the adventure. That was sad. That was sad. But thank God we held together, we prayed over there, we felt we have right over there, even though they tried to take all the right of us. The big part that when we went out after 7 hours out of the police station, we found our friends waiting for us. That was great feeling. That we saw Steve, we saw John, and others, Maysan. And I still remember that first word I said to Steve, I'm coming back. Right? And then I did shopping. Then I saw a store open, and my girl, I remembered my girl, she asked me to bring picture of the Aqsa Mosque. So I went, I did shopping. I felt I have to do that. I felt I have to get that fear out, that feeling. Wasn't a good feeling. And it wasn't that great experience, but it's never gonna hold us from going back. We always wanna go back. And in the beginning I said, it's a small incident and it's a big incident for a reason. It's a small incident because it's not gonna stop us from going back, but it's a big incident. It's a big incident. We didn't expect to face that, but it's a small incident if we compare it with Ahad Tamimi's suffering or the Palestinian suffering for 70 years, and Syrian people are suffering now for 7 years. So detention for 7 hours is not a big deal. Thank you very much.
Well, my name is Steve Jungkeit. I am the senior minister of the Old Lyme Congregational Church, and this was my 5th time in Palestine. My first time was some 20 years ago, and it's been a privilege to be a part of these tours with the Tree of Life. I want to begin by sharing a story that my daughter told me several days ago. 2 years ago, I took my 9-year-old daughter Sabina with me to Palestine. And she became very, very awakened and conscious of all the injustices that were going on over there, and has continued to be active and thoughtful about these issues. So 2 days ago, she reported a conversation that she had with me with an adult family member. The subject of Palestine came up, and this adult family member said, well, you know, it's the Palestinians who keep getting all of this U.S. money, and they keep using it to build all sorts of, weapons and things like that. And my now 11-year-old daughter was able to say, on the contrary, it's the other way around. It's actually the Israelis who get all this money and who build all of these weapons. And I was so proud of her, because being over there with a 9-year-old, now 11-year-old, given all the things that are happening, as Shelly shared with young people, is a heartbreaking sort of thing. Now, to that point of countering this wider narrative, I think it's so tempting and easy, particularly in the United States, to live in a kind of bubble and to not be able to penetrate that bubble somehow. Now, let me give you an image of what this looks like. After our friends were arrested and detained and were being held in prison, many of us stood outside the jail waiting for them to be released, doing what we could to get them released. As we were waiting there for a good 7 hours, we saw a lot of things standing outside the prison. One thing we saw was an 11-year-old, 11, 10, I don't know how old this kid was, a young Palestinian child exiting the prison. He also had been detained. When he got out, he kind of looked around, you know, where are my parents? Where are the people who are here to receive me? A very heartbreaking moment, but the even more heartbreaking and troubling moment was this. As the hours wore on, as the day dragged on and as night came on, a tour group came by, and they came and stood right by the police center where our friends were being held, and they were a part of a religious tour group. And they must have stood by this police station for, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I'm not sure how long it was, and they were absolutely riveted by the stones of the old city of Jerusalem, by the Tower of David. They were hearing all sorts of archaeological and historical facts, presumably learning a lot about what happened 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, but they were absolutely and utterly oblivious to what was going on 10 feet away from them. They had no idea of the human drama that was occurring right by that police station, and they were just oblivious to it. That, to me, is a metaphor for the ways that many of us choose to live our lives. Many of us choose to go through the world pretending that we don't see those things, using our faith to shield ourselves from these current day realities while concentrating on realities that took place 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. I wish to be a part of a faith tradition that pushes us out of that bubble and to confront the realities that are occurring now. I want to end with something that Cornel West is fond of saying. When he speaks, he begins by saying, sometimes he begins by quoting Socrates, who said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." This is something that's true. I believe this. But then he follows that up right away with a quote from Malcolm X, who says, "The examined life is hard." Yeah. The examined life is hard. Here in the Tree of Life, we believe that the unexamined life is not worth living, that we need to get outside of that bubble. But we also believe that the examined life is hard but necessary, and we're pleased to be able to engage in that sort of work. So thank you.
Hello, I'm John Selders, and let me be quick about my comments, and then maybe we'll get into some of the discussion. Clearly, for me, as a black man in America, when I travel abroad, I see oppression differently than other people do. And so for me, in all kinds of ways, there is a reminiscent frame. There is a very familiar that is seen and viewed and experienced as I travel, in particular in this particular context of travel, in this setting. Much of how it goes down feels very much like it goes down here in the United States of America. The way that oppression is fronted with militarized police or militarized military, the way land is grabbed and snatched, the way people are controlled and corralled, the way people are walking while Palestinian and picked on and abused. I see that in everyday life here in the United States, in my own hometown, in my own community, in my own neighborhood. So I would say for me, this trip wakens all of that inside me. And it certainly is the point at which I want to have a conversation and continue to have conversation, not about necessarily what's happening over there, although there is a whole bunch we need to say about what's happening over there. But there are the connecting pieces. And of course, in the midst of connecting, let's connect it. It is United States money that is driving what's happening over there. It is United States policies that's driving the oppression that continues to happen to the Palestinian people. And And I find it very interesting within the context of being a follower of Jesus to make that connection strong. Jesus was a Palestinian Jew. And I think that gets forgotten as a Christian, that there's a direct through line that we got to pay attention to.
I'd like to talk about violence against children, and it's a really difficult topic, but it needs to be aired. And as we're all too familiar, we have plenty of violence against children here in the U.S., starting from 2 blocks down from this mosque, where Jason Negron was murdered by Bridgeport police last May, to Sandy Hook, to Parkland, to Sanford, Florida, where Trayvon Martin was killed, to Cleveland, and to John Selders' hometown of Ferguson, where Michael Brown was murdered. I'd like to fit into my 5 minutes 4 inspiring stories, so I hope I can fit it all in. The first, and this is people that we met with in Palestine and in Jerusalem, who are working on the issue of violence against children and against youth. The first is Ivan Karakashian, who is a director in Jerusalem for Defense for Children Palestine, Defense for Children International Palestine. And they're specifically working on the issue of incarceration of children in the Israeli military police legal system. Since the year 2000, an estimated 10,000 children and youth have been arrested, Palestinian youth have been arrested and subject to the Israeli military system. And I'd like to tell you some really sobering statistics about what happens to those children once they're arrested. 72% of them experience physical violence. This is from a survey of 600 children that was conducted by Defense for Children International Palestine and by the American Friends Service Committee. 95% were hand-tied, 85% were blindfolded, 45% were detained from their homes in the middle of the night. 66% faced verbal abuse, humiliation, and intimidation. 96% were interrogated without the presence of a family member, and this is children and youth who are between 12 and 18 years old. 25% were subject to stress positions, and 38% signed documents in Hebrew, a language that they typically don't even understand. So part of this is really supported by us as Bishop Selders mentioned, by our vast financial aid to Israel. And one of the reactions to that is that Representative Betty McCollum from Minnesota has introduced a bill, H.R. 4391, promoting human rights for ending Israeli military detention of Palestinian children. This is a really a land-breaking act which has 21 sponsors in the Congress, and we don't expect it to pass, obviously, in this Congress and with this administration, but it's an important first step to giving voice to this intolerable, unacceptable, horrific thing that's happening to Palestinian children. Call your representative, tell them to support H.R. 4391. There's also a petition on the table for you to sign it.
Things on all of the messengers of God, and we read in the Quran, God says, "La nufarriqu ahadim min rusulih." God doesn't differentiate between any of his messengers. And so it was interesting when David Good from the Old Lion Congregational Church and the Tree of Life invited me 4 years ago and said, you know, you speak about how much you revere Jesus. Come walk in the footsteps of Jesus with us. You go to Mecca and Medina in the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Of course, it's also Ibrahim alayhi salam. But this was it really got me thinking. And I want to reflect on the fact, from a religious perspective, what drove us to go, because it's not just the life of Jesus that obviously we witnessed, but it was going to Hebron and seeing the fact that it was Abraham, the patriarch of all three major faiths here, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, and the struggles to go to Hebron. We saw the oppression there. We saw that we couldn't go down certain streets, Shuhada Street in particular, if you were Muslim. But because we were with the Jews and the Christians, they were more lenient, and they let us go. But the rules aren't that the Muslims aren't allowed, it's that the Palestinians aren't allowed. So you see that not being a Muslim is one oppression, but the Palestinians have a double oppression in the land that they live in the land that they were born in. So it reflected on this messenger Abraham, who's supposed in Islamic tradition to have built Al-Aqsa, the 40 years after he built the Kaaba, with Ishmael alayhi salam, the Kaaba, and with Ishaq alayhi salam, Isaac, the Al-Aqsa, and how he must be able to see, as we know, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam can actually take salam. He can see those who come and give him the greetings of peace. How much does Ibrahim alayhi salam see of his descendants who are fighting and who have kind of almost lost it in terms of the message that Ibrahim alayhi salam is bringing? And of Moses, right? When we talk about the messengers, we talk about Moses, who spent his whole life trying to get to Jerusalem.
See all the complete talks on our YouTube channel, Struggle Video Media. Supporters of African asylum seekers blocked a road in Israel this week. The situation is in flux. At one point, Netanyahu announced that the UN had brokered a deal where 1/3 of the asylum seekers would be sent to Europe, and most would stay for another 5 years. This provoked the ultra right to object, and the deal collapsed. We'll have more next week. As we record on Friday, the Gaza protest march has been renewed, and Israeli snipers shot to death Usama Khamis Kudaya. That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for The Struggle.